So as discussed in the last session, the agenda today is to go ahead with some of the advanced features with respect to unit testing, where we'll be first of all starting with the code coverage metrics, what it is, why it is important, how to use them to measure the effectiveness of the tests. Then some more examples with more complex scenarios for the unit testing, which includes creating and running some unit tests for some managed code. Then another complex example where we'll look for implementing the test driven development approach. We'll also try to understand live unit testing features. And then towards the end, we'll be talking about unit testing the asynchronous code. Okay, so let's get started with the first part, code coverage. Okay, so the point that we are looking to discuss here is code coverage, correct? What do you understand by the term code coverage? Anybody?
uh, Number of lines of our functionality is covered by unit test cases.
Yeah. And in a simple language, can I say that it is more about how much of the code is actually being covered by the test cases?
Yes, yes,
Whether my test is actually going ahead deep and testing all the code which I have written or not. Suppose I'm having 100 lines of code. Is it testing 100 lines of code or not? Or is it just going ahead with 90 lines or 80 lines, whatever it is? The more is the coverage or more is the scope of the coverage, more reliable results can be assumed from the test cases, right?
yes,
So typically code coverage metrics are the quantitative measurements. I said quantitative because we can quantify them as we spoke about number of lines of code. Quantitative measurements that assess the extent to which your test suite exercises or covers the source code of your application. What is the advantage of this? They help us to provide the insights into how well our tests are testing our code and can help us identify areas of code that may be insufficiently tested, where we find that the code is pretty important, pretty crucial for the application. and that itself is not being covered, or maybe partially covered. So we might want to throw some emphasis, rewrite, refactor the code for the test methods, and make sure that the percentage of code coverage increases so that we can get more positive results, right?
Yes.
Now here, let's talk about the different code coverage matrices, exactly how to use them effectively to measure the effectiveness of the test cases. Okay. So the first section which comes under this is something what we call a statement coverage. What is it? Our code contains different number of statements, programming statements. Statement coverage is responsible for measuring the percentage of the executable statements that are actually executed by your test suite. Test suite means collection of test methods. It is responsible for providing the basic assessment of how much your code is actually exercised by your tests. So this is the most basic level of code coverage feature. But my point, with the help of this, you can actually easily identify the untested lines of code or untested statements. Though it does not guarantee that all the logical paths through your code are going to be tested by this. It's more about whether the statement is getting tested or not. It's not about the high level view, like the flow should be tested as well at times. If I'm doing some action, that action might have some steps, whether those steps are executed in the correct sequence, correct chronology or not. That could be important at times. So statement coverage is not responsible for that. Understood? Yes.
Yes.
Next is something what we call as branch coverage. Branch over here has nothing to do with the DevOps features or your source control features, where we use the term branching a lot. Here, the branching refers to your decisions, like if statements, switch cases, etc. Understood? And hence, it is also known as decision coverage. If branch coverage is confusing term, then you can use the term as decision coverage. It is responsible for assessing the execution of all the possible branches, which includes all the true and false outcomes within the different conditional statements. As I said, those conditional statements could be if else or switch case. But my point? So by giving different inputs, you can have different branches covered. And that's what this branch coverage is responsible for. It provides more comprehensive assessment of your tests and ultimately helps you find the issues related to your conditional logic. Sometimes the condition being tested itself could be a incorrect condition, right? So that's where this becomes important. Yes or no? Yes.
Yes, Sanket.
Next is something what we call as function or method coverage. Any guess what this could be?
So basically, we
You're
have to check the return type.
not necessary return type.
Type, not what the value is returning.
No,
Okay.
because that is something which we can do with assertions, right?
Oh, yes.
Your test case itself does that. So why code coverage will be required in that? Function or method coverage is responsible for measuring whether all the functions or methods in your code are called by your test or not. There could be 100 methods, whether all 100 methods are being called by different test cases or not. If there is some method which is not called by any test case, that will be highlighted as well. That this is not something which was included in the test run. So probably there is some untested code. Yes or no?
Yes.
And this becomes more important with the code that is present within some library, class library, right? Because we don't know which function will be called by which user at what time, in what circumstances. That's why it's important for us to write test cases which just keep all the functions in fairly working conditions, providing the desired results. Yes or no? So some of your functions might be written during the development process, but over the period of time, the utilization or utility of those methods may not be there going forward. These kind of methods are called as dead methods. The code in them is called as dead code. And probably this function or method coverage help you identify the dead code. With the help of this identification, you can decide whether to get rid of this dead code or there is something wrong which is making this code dead and we want to revive it. Correct? Very, very useful with the case where your application has got a very huge code base. Understood?
Yes.
Next is something what is called as line coverage. Prima facie, it looks like statement coverage only. But there is a difference. Statement, when I say switch case as a whole is a statement. If else whole is a statement. While as a whole is a statement. Do while, for each, these are statements, right? Now these statements may have block of code into them as well. Hence, statement coverage doesn't mean each and every individual line of code. Statement means the block. At times it may be overlapping with line also, but it doesn't guarantee. Whereas line coverage is more fine-tuned or fine-grained. We talk about each and every line of code which is there into your application. Individual line we focus on. This is where the count of each executed line is maintained and put into the code coverage report. Understood? It will be useful while finding the issues, bugs at a specific line of code. For that, each and every line of code must get tested. And we need to know whether each line of code is executing or not. Got my point?
Yes.
Next one is something what we call as path coverage. Any guess what this is or this could be? Somewhat similar to branch coverage, but branch coverage is more about decisions. Path coverage goes one level above that. Path coverage means, say if I'm using a menu driven application, at one point in time, I might select one menu. At another point in time, I might select another menu option. For each menu, there are sequence or chronology of statements that need to execute. Path coverage is about evaluating all possible paths through your code, which also includes the complex conditional logics, loops, etc. And then at the end, it is responsible for measuring the percentage of unique paths executed by your tests. Understood? Looks pretty encouraging, but at the end, it might get too complicated, too challenging to achieve the high path coverage in a very, very complex code scenario. Clear?
Yes.
Now let's talk about how to use code coverage metrics effectively. How to use code coverage metrics effectively. There are some guidelines for the same. We'll go through them. First is you have to set your coverage goal. What that mean? What kind of project you are working with? What are its quality objectives set up by your QA team or set up by your analyst or set up by your end users themselves, means the clients. This is important because different projects might have different acceptable levels of coverage, right? So first step is always about setting your coverage goal. What all things you want to focus on? What all things are important for your project? Next is automation. Automation of what? I'll say of measurement. What is it? For this, you must be using some code coverage analysis tools that can integrate with your development environment or the build process where the build process might be driven by continuous integration also to measure the coverage automatically. Visual Studio Enterprise comes up with these tools built into them. Next, review and analyze the reports. Generated by the code coverage tools so that you can easily identify the areas with low coverage. Here, you can pay attention to the areas with complex logic, which could be more error prone, or which could be having the code which is more error prone, or it could be some critical functionality within which you don't want any bugs, any issues being reported at all. Understand? Understand?
Yes.
Now, with this review and analysis, we might find that, okay, there are some areas which are untouched or untested. What we should do? We refactor the code or refactor the test case, depending upon what exact finding we have reported from the code coverage. Is it the problem with the actual code? Is it the problem with the test code? So refactor your code or the test to improve test coverage. If you find some issue with the test cases, you might need to modify some of them, or you might want to add additional test cases to improve the code coverage, especially in areas with low coverage. And this could be the case mostly with the edge cases or boundary conditions, which are usually at high risk, right? Understood?
Yes.
Yes.
Next is access quality and effectiveness. Assess quality and effectiveness. For producing the quality code, your quality of the test cases itself should be high. And for that, the code coverage is there to help you. But you cannot just depend on the code coverage, because having high code coverage does not guarantee the absence of defects or issues. You might need to use other testing techniques also along with your unit test cases. Those testing techniques could be something like manual testing, exploratory testing, etc., along with your unit test and code coverage to assess your software quality at the top level comprehensively. Got my point? Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then this is always an ongoing process, right? You have to keep on re-evaluating the test cases, the code coverage over the time. Reason, your code also keeps on changing. So every time there is a change, you have to reevaluate your test cases, your code coverage, everything. Understood?
Yes. Yes.
All good things we discussed about it. But remember that the code coverage metrics are just one tool in your testing toolbox or environment. Maybe they can help you identify gaps in your test suites, but at the same time, they should always be used alongside other testing practices to ensure comprehensive software quality at the highest level. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go for our previous example. If not already open, you can just open Visual Studio and say open project solution. From unit testing, I go with this. UT demo, unit test with MOQ. Solution file I get opened where we have several test cases already created. If you remember this discount calculator, email sender, then logger manager, different scenarios we built. Yes. If I just
Yes.
want to see whether tests are still succeeding or not, I just go to test menu and say run all tests. It says running test, test finished. All green tick marks are there. Means all the test cases are passing. Yes. With this, I just know that my code is correct, but how do I make sure it has checked, it has touched, it has tested each and every piece of code, every function, every loop, every if statement, switch case statement, the other statements, everything in my code is getting tested. How do I make sure? Test cases or their execution will not help me with this. Correct?
Yes.
I need code coverage for this. So I close Test Explorer. And here, under the test menu itself, you can see there is a tool called as Analyze Code Coverage for All Tests. So it's not only going to enable the code coverage, but it is actually going to act as an analysis tool in itself. Most of the integrated development environments would provide you this. The title may be different. Visual Studio uses the title as Analyze Code Coverage for All Tests. Let's select this. So it actually runs the test cases first of all, and then it prepares the report for you. So here you can see there is a window, code coverage results, which has been opened up. The report has been created into some file. And here I do see what all matrices or matrices are there. At the top level, 141 blocks were covered, 3 blocks were not covered. Number of lines covered, 72. Partially covered lines 3, not covered lines 0. This looks pretty good because as of now code is simple, most likely you will have good results. But once the code starts getting complex, more and more branches are there, more and more conditions are there, more and more looping is there, probably not covered lines count is also going to increase, right? Detailed report I have here.
Saket, one question.
Yeah,
So when so you were saying the loops, right? For example, we have
yeah,
if, we are running a loop which contains, let's say, 10 lines of code. So
yes,
for every, let's say it is iterating 10 times. So it will take us 10 into 10, 100 lines of code, or so it will take only
100,
the,
100. And
so
for that,
iteration.
you can have the filters also created for that. So if you want to count it as one only, you can do that by applying filters.
Where
I
we
mean,
can apply
behavior is something which is changeable, right? So you have
the.
something like configuration for the code coverage, right?
Okay.
With that, you can actually change it.
So that is actually, that would be a dynamic, right? Like, so if we suppose,
Yeah.
then that how it will be,
See,
evaluating.
basically, it's like just like for breakpoint, you can say, okay, count first 5 iterations or first 2 iterations, or just break on the 5th iteration. So though it is dynamic, you can say that, okay, count only 1 iteration
Okay.
uh, instead of counting all the iterations.
Okay. So
Basically,
that.
for the number of lines of code I'm talking about. The loop execution has to be counted for whatever number of times it is iterating. So suppose 100 times the loop is running. So that has to be counted 100. But the number of lines which are executing inside it, there are 10 lines. 100 into 10, 1000 result will be produced if you just go ahead with the default configuration. So you might want that. Okay, for each iteration, one execution of this line has happened. That data should be enough for me, right? But again, that depends on your requirement. You might want to see whether each iteration has performed the action or not, has executed this line of code or not. In some cases, you might just want the high level view of it.
So that configuration we can do that in code coverage configuration.
Yes. So you just need to put the filters in right places.
Okay.
Understood?
Okay.
Now see, I had this code coverage result here. Double click on any of the tested code here, and you go to the code where it actually shows your code as highlighted code,
Which means that
which says
is
that this code
covered,
has been executed, this has been
executed.
covered,
So,
right? The color coding you can change. Again, there is a configuration for that.
okay.
Default in Visual Studio is light blue color, right? So here, simply you can go for changing it from tools, options, fonts and colors. And then here you can actually look for something related to code coverage.
Sure. So one question I'm having. So when
Yes.
we calculate the code coverage, so
Yes.
how actually the internally it will calculate, because as we discussed earlier,
Yeah.
the code coverage lines for given condition, it may not execute all the lines, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so how that will be?
Yeah. That is why you are having the detailed input over here, right? Like what are number of lines are covered. You can just drill down and see exactly what is happening there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
You have certain tools also over here, like import results from someone else's work. I mean, some other project someone has shared with you. Then you have export result also. Someone has to export, then you can import those results. Two different test runs might have been conducted and the results needs to be merged. So in that case, this merge results tool is there. Whether the color coding needs to be displayed or not, you can toggle it from here. If you just want to remove the color coding, you can remove from here. And then here you have the code coverage views, whether it is going to be project view, source view, whether it is going to be full report or change set report, which repository, if it is configured, like Git repository, if I've configured, then that will also come up, right? And then I can actually filter the results further, like what level I'm looking to have this result produced. Okay.
Okay.
So here there is a search box also available. If you are looking to search by specific name, you can type the name over here. If you want to search by type, you can specify the type name over here. If you want 100% covered lines to be searched for, you can actually enter something like covered percent lines colon 100, maybe something like this. In fact, it does have some kind of IntelliSense support also. If you see here, search filters, covered, percent blocks, covered, percent lines also is there. I can say less than 80, I can say it should be 100% or equal to 100%, or just 100 also will do the same thing. Okay. Partially covered lines, let's say less than 50. So it will filter the results accordingly. Whatever condition you specify here, it will just do that.
So during the code coverage calculation,
Yeah.
how does this differentiate between the, for example, we will be referencing external libraries and also some would be, internal libraries as well, right? So it will internally differentiate, right? Like this is the external or this is the library which is not belongs to
Yes.
this. So we should not
Correct.
consider this as
Correct.
it.
Correct. Correct. So as you can see here, our main project DLL also is displayed. So there the counts will be 0 because the source code will not be available, right? But the test cases on the functionality of that library, the results will be produced over here for those test cases. So at those, I mean, in that particular case, the results from the test will be more important than the results produced for the library itself. Like right now, it is producing results for library also. It says that, okay, 29 number of lines have been covered for this project, in which email sender has got 10 lines covered, 12 lines are covered from discount calculator, and logger manager, 7 lines are covered. So if it is a third-party library, I will not have this result produced, this detail produced.
Okay.
Because there will be no source code for it, correct?
Right.
Sanket, here
Yes.
partially covered. So
Yeah.
how do we check those lines or conditions?
Okay. Uh, Actually, it is a color coding only which is responsible for it. So just looking for if it is doing that. Are you able to see 2 or 3 different colors there on your system? Basically, the covered lines are highlighted as green and non-covered lines should be red. And if you find a mix of green and red, that is something like partially covered lines. So if you are able to see that color coding, just let me know. There could be a possibility of yellow color also highlighted for the partially covered lines. Just see if you are able to see it. Yeah, so in my case, it's like this. The blue color is touched area. Partially touched area is this grayish blue, and not touched area is light green. So probably this is the line we can say is partially covered. These are the lines which are being covered. And there is no light green area which says that some line is not covered at all. So anyhow, not covered lines count is coming as 0 over here. Just check in your case what color combination you have, color coding you have. Right, the old school colors will be red, green, and yellow. But again, depends on your theme, depends on your settings of Visual Studio, what color coding uh, you get. Can someone confirm what is the color coding you guys are getting? So here, see it says covered lines is 12, partially covered line is 1, right? Focus on this and let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. This is highlighted in blue color. This is covered lines. And 1 was the count for partially covered with grayish blue. And this is this. So it matches with the results it is showing. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So just check your settings and see what color coding has been configured. And if you want, you can just go old school way also. We just saw where to change that. In options, I can search for code coverage or under font and colors. Coverage not touched area, partially touched area, and touched area. You can change colors from here. So suppose if I make this touched area as green, partially touched area as yellow, and not touched area as red. This is the old school way. And you can see it's pretty clear now. Light colors usually confuses, whereas dark colors are pretty good. Easy to find out, right? And here also you get the indicators. So it says covered lines for green. For yellow, if I just hover, it says partially covered lines. Yes?
Yes.
So I hope this is clear to all. Code coverage.
Yes, Ankit.
Okay. So let's move on to another example where we'll create some more unit test cases for some different scenarios. Okay. So let's take a new project. Let's take a class library project again. Next, I'll name this as UT underscore demo. X unit 2. Next, .NET 5 is the framework we are using. Create, save, and we get the class library project created. Class1.cs is there. Let's rename this to product.cs. Yes. What this product class has got is the first property, which is as suggested, public int ID gets set. I'm okay with that. Name is there. And then I have another property, which is of type decimal. And the name is price. So just create your class like this. Done. Let's go to Solution Explorer, right click on the project and say add a new item, which is going to be an interface. So select interface here and name this as I inventory service. I inventory service. Make the interface public. And let's put one single member into it. Get stock count, which takes in a single integer parameter named as product ID. So just imagine we are creating a simple shopping cart kind of functionality, which we want to test further. Done.
Yes.
Now let's go to project in Solution Explorer again. Right click on project, add class. Name this class as shopping cart. Make the class public. Couple of class level members, which are private read only. First, I have a list of products. So I say list, generic type parameter goes in as product. I name this as cart items. And then I have another member which is private read only, I inventory service by the name inventory service. Okay. Here goes the constructor, which receives I inventory service parameter by the name inventory service, assigns it to this dot inventory service. And then I say cart items equals to new list of product. I get the cart initialized. Done. Is it done?
Yes.
I add two methods over here. Public void add item that receives one instance of product by the name product. And then remove item is the next method, which also receives product to be removed as parameter and removes that from the list. So to remove from the list, we directly have a method that can be called on the cart items. Cart items dot remove product. For add item, I want some conditional code. If the product is there in the stock, then only it can be added to the cart, right? If there is no stock for that specific product, it cannot be added to the cart. Yes or no? Like
Yes.
on Amazon, you get to see sometimes out of stock. Means the stock value is zero at that point in time. Correct? So that's what the check I want to put here. If product, rather I'll say if inventory service dot get stock count for the product with the ID represented by product dot ID, the value returned is greater than zero. That means there is item present in the inventory and it can be added to the cart. So I say cart items dot add product. Otherwise, I just ignore. I'm not throwing any exception here. If required, I can throw exception also. That depends on business need. Yes or no?
Yes.
So let's say this is the code which I want to test. For that, in the solution, I right click, add new project, class library. Next, the name should be the original project name dot tests. So I name this as UT underscore demo X unit 2 dot tests. Next, .NET 5, create. Class library is created here. I rename this class1.cs file to shopping cart tests.cs. Click yes so that your class also gets renamed. And as I've said earlier also, if it is not, rename it manually because this is more important than file name. Yes. Now to make this project a test project with XUnit, there are some packages we need to install. What are the packages? Anyone remember?
XUnit,
XUnit,
mock,
Yeah. So
or
manage NuGet
XUnit visual.
packages. Browse. The first one is XUnit. This one. Latest stable version is good for this. Install. Okay. I accept. Next one that we installed was
mock.
XUnit dot. No,
Product dot
it
visuals.
was
Test platform dot
Microsoft
test
dot test
host.
platform dot test host rather. Latest stable version for this also was good, right?
Yes.
Accept the license. And next one was
Visuals.
xunit.runner.visual studio. This is where we used a different version 2.4.5. Install. Okay. Fine. Now, once the packages are added, let's add the namespaces on the top, mock. Yeah, this one also is going to be needed as we don't have the real inventory service created yet. So we need one more package here. So manage NuGet packages. And the package name that I'm looking for is mock, MOQ. This is the one, and latest stable version for this was also good. Just install. Okay. Accept the license if asked for. And once done, you can just close this tab. So we import mock. Then XUnit also we import here. Right? What next? Now we want our test cases to be created. Not the parameterized ones this time. So I'll just start with fact, not theory. Let's say my first one is public void add item. I name it further as when in stock. There will be two cases. Add item called when in stock and when not in stock, right? So when in stock, the product should get added to the cart. So I further name this as underscore should add to cart. Then some arrange activity here where I say product ID that I'm looking for is 1. So where product ID equals 1. I create the product object itself. So let's say product equals new product. What's missing here? We didn't add the reference to this previous project, right? So again, come here to Solution Explorer, right click on dependencies for the test project, add project reference, select this project reference for demo X unit 2, okay, and import that namespace also. So let's say using ut underscore demo X unit 2, which will resolve the product class, right? I want this to be initialized with object initializer. Say ID is equals to product ID. Name is equal to test product, or whatever name you want to give, you can give that. Comma price, whatever price you want to give, you can give. Let's say it is something like 10.0 M, and then semicolon at the end of the curly brace. Then I say where inventory service object I want here via mocking. So I say where inventory service mock is equal to new mock I inventory service. Inventory service mock dot setup. What it should do, I set up here. To set up, parameter service goes in service dot get stock count product ID and further I say dot returns 1. I'm simulating that it returns there is a product and hence I'm returning 1. 1 means it's there in the inventory, right? And I say where shopping cart equals new shopping cart. Based on inventory service mock dot object, because the constructor needs inventory service to be passed. Then the act section where I say shopping cart dot add item. Which item? Product. And then the assertion. So here I say assert. I just want to ensure whether the product got added or not. So I use assert dot contains expected object goes first. So here I say product, comma, shopping cart dot get items. Now for this, we will require our shopping cart class to be modified a bit to have this get items method also added. I go back to shopping cart, and here I say there is another member, public list product, get items, that returns me the list of items. And simply what it does is returns the current list. So here I say return cart items. Okay, so there will be no error here as well. I hope this is clear. Yes.
Yes.
Let's copy this method, paste it back. I rename the method to add item when out of stock. Should not add to cart. So change the name accordingly. Let's say the product ID I initialize is with the value 3. Name, just for our understanding, I give as out of stock product. It can be the real product name actually. Ideally, it will be the real product name only. Let's say the price is 20.0 M. M means decimal. Then the inventory service mock is created, based on which the configuration says that it returns a value. 0 means there is no item for product ID 3 in the inventory. Then the act, so shopping cart dot add item product. And here instead of contains, I'll say does not contain this product in this collection. Clear? Here we are checking for existence. Here we are checking for non-existence, right?
Yes.
Paste the code once again. This is going to be for removal. So here I say the name of the test method is remove item underscore should remove from cart. Let's say this time the product ID is 2. Name is another product. Price is, let's say, 15.0 M. Inventory service mock object is created. Here the stock count returns 1 because I can remove only that item which is present in the inventory. Shopping cart object created based on this mock object. First I say add item into the cart, and then the actual act which says shopping cart dot remove item. Which item? The product. And again, here I say assert dot does not contain product in the list return. Because after removal, it should not be there, right? Should not be there anymore in the cart. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Build everything to see all good in terms of syntaxes. Then go to test and say run all tests. Now you can actually go for code coverage as well. Test Explorer automatically pops up. And here I do see all the test cases are possible. Yes. Code coverage if you want to see. Test, analyze code coverage for all tests. It will re-execute all the tests and then will prepare the code coverage results. So here I get the matrices. It shows there are 2 lines which are not covered this time in the main project. Product class. Precisely here I see the count is 1 for get name. Right click, go to source code, and it says, because I'm not reading name and price anywhere. So it is saying these 2 are not executed. Correct? Yes.
So in that case, we should have only set property.
Yeah. So if your intention is like you are going to only set and not retrieve, yes, you can refactor your code. But practically with shopping cart, that may not be the case, because when you go for the completion of this application, you will actually need to read the name and price also, isn't it?
Yes.
So it should be a thorough check. Right now, it may not be being covered, but in future, near future itself, it may get covered as well. So immediately don't take decision. Even if you say decide to remove it, don't remove it, rather comment it. And when you see that it is never required, then remove it. Otherwise, just leave it there. And whenever it is needed, just uncomment. Make sense?
Yes.
Right. So this is more application kind of demo that we had. Prior to this, we just had some simple arithmetic calculations being done. And that is what we were unit testing. Now, this is more near to some real life application, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so time for break. We'll resume at 11:20. And next that we are going to see is another example, a bit complex one like this for managed code, though this also is representing managed code itself. Then we will be working with another demo for test-driven development approach, followed by live unit testing. And then last will be async code. Okay. So 11:20 we will resume.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm back. Shall we proceed?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So one more demo. Let's take a new project, class library. Next, we'll name this as UT underscore demo X unit 3. Next, create. Let's rename this class1.cs to bank account.cs. Yes. So now this is little bit from banking thing. Earlier was shopping cart, right? So let's say here I have private read only string customer name. Next I have private double balance. I have a default constructor over here, and then overloaded parameterized constructor that takes in couple of parameters, string customer name, comma double balance. Here I say this dot customer name equals customer name. This dot balance equals to balance. I have a read only property for customer name. So let's say string customer name. I said it's a read only property. So I just have the get block over there, which returns me customer name. Same way, I have another read only property, public double balance, that returns me balance. Okay, confirm if done till here. Yes. Done. I have the next member as public void debit, kind of withdrawal feature, double amount. It checks if amount is greater than balance, then it has to be an exception. So throw new argument out of range exception. And the message which I put in is amount. If amount is less than 0, that should be an exception as well, again out of range. So throw new argument out of range exception, amount. If all good, then I say balance plus equal to, sorry, balance minus equal to amount. Let's make a mistake as I want to test this. So let's make it plus equal to amount. It could be a typo error or it could be a logical mistake, or test case should capture this. Let's copy this method. If there is a debit method, there has to be a credit method as well. Paste it here. Rename this to credit, double amount. This check is not required because balance can be anything. It can be 0. But if it is less than 0, I mean amount is less than 0, there is an exception. Otherwise, it proceeds with balance plus equal to amount. Here I put the correct code. Okay.
So debit is balance minus amount.
Yeah. So ideally, it should be balance minus amount. To simulate, there will be an error. We are saying it's plus amount.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so this is our code which needs to be tested. So the known things here in the solution, I add another new project. The name is, first of all, it's a class library. The name is UT underscore XUnit demo3 dot tests create with .NET 5 as the framework. And then the first thing I do is I rename this class from class1.cs to bank account tests.cs. Click yes. And then the 3 packages. So right click here on dependencies for test project, manage NuGet packages, browse. First one to go is XUnit. Select install. Okay. Accept. Next one is Microsoft.test platform.test host. Install. Okay. Accept. And then the next one is xunit.runner.visual studio. Version is 2.4.5. Install. Okay. And close. Here we say using X unit. One more reference we need to be added here. So dependencies, right click, add project reference, previous project. Okay. And one more namespace we import here, ut underscore demo X unit 3. Okay. There goes our first fact. Void. Let's say what we can put is debit with valid amount underscore updates balance. Some arrangement. So double open balance or opening balance equals to numbers I put there. Then I say debit amount equals 4.55. Then I say double expected value is 7.44. 11.99 minus 4.55 should be 7.44, right? When I'm debiting. Now here I create new bank account. Customer name I pass as James. And the opening balance I give here. Then I go for the act. So bank account dot debit amount. And then the assertion. So here I say double. First capture the actual value. Actual is equal to bank account dot balance. Assert dot equal expected comma actual. Tolerance of 0.001 I'm giving. Mainly about decimal places actually. Right, as we discussed just in the last session. Okay. Let's test this first. So test, run all tests. Test Explorer, it says one failed. If I want, I can do a debug run also and see that there is something wrong here. Correct? So let's say we did the debug run. Maybe we can do it from here itself. Either you click this and say debug, or in Test Explorer, you can right click on this and say debug. One and the same thing. Here it is failing, right? I just redo everything again. Move the arrow here, or probably the best way is put a breakpoint here and then say debug. F10 function key, F10, F10. Till here, I don't see any problem. Here, I want to see what's going wrong with the debit. So I say F11 so that I go in, step in. I see the amount is correctly coming over here, right? F10, amount is greater than balance, no error. Less than 0, no error. Correct? Here I realize that, okay, I made the mistake. So what I do is stop, fix the bug, and rerun your test. Just say test, run all tests. Or you can run the specific test. Correct? In Test Explorer, now you'll see all good. Yes or no? I hope this is clear. Let's go for another fact here. Public void debit underscore when amount is less than 0 underscore should throw argument out of range exception. Okay. Then I say double opening balance equals same like before 11.99. Double debit amount. This time I'll put a wrong value. So let's say minus 100.00. Bank account object is created here. Bank account, new bank account, James, comma, opening balance. And then what I expect in this case is an exception. So assert dot throws. What type of exception I'm looking for? Argument out of range exception, right? And then the setup of this throws method itself, the action. So here I say there is no parameter, goes in bank account dot debit amount. This is the call. And this call must result in an exception being thrown, that is argument out of range exception. Now this test run is not done. So here itself, I can just click on this icon and I say run only this test. I get a green tick, means it is doing the work as expected. There is no problem with it. Got my point? So just one simple exercise over here. Can you quickly rewrite one more method here when the amount is more than the balance? So suppose the method that I'm asking you to write as a test method is debit underscore when amount is more than balance underscore should throw argument out of range exception. So instead of is less than 0, you have to put when amount is more than balance. Can you do it quickly? Just share in the chat box once done.
Sanket, here the debit amount is more or the balance is?
More than the balance. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. So instead of minus 100, maybe it is 100.
And in the asset, we need to change. It's greater than.
Yeah. We have a check already, right? If amount is more than balance, it is throwing exception. So this is the section we want to test. Got it?
Yes.
With a different method. Or else you can just convert this to theory. And then inline data can pass different parameters, right? Where this method itself takes in the input.
Uh, Saket, I have sent in the chat. Could you please
Yeah,
check it?
just looking at that.
Yeah.
That looks right.
Okay.
There can be two assertions in this case, right?
Uh, but still we get the same exception, right? I think. Do we need?
I believe it should take care of it. Yes.
Yeah.
We are not checking for specific message or something. Only
Yeah.
the type of exception. So that should be okay.
Yeah. So if we are checking for any particular exception, so in the inline data itself, can we just pass the proper message?
Inline data, I guess, allows you only one parameter, right?
No, I think we can pass.
Just one moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can pass. It's a param array of objects, so you can
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah. Cool.
And then
Thanks.
that can be used in the assertion.
Yeah.
Anybody who did it this way using fact instead of theory? So shall we proceed?
Yes.
Okay. So let's have an example on test-driven development. Take a new project. Class library. Next. With test-driven development, we write the test cases first, right? Let's name this as UT underscore demo X unit 4 dot tests. Solution name, I don't want the same. I want solution name to be just UT underscore demo X unit 4. So I just update it. Next and create. Done. Rename the class. To let's say basic. Uh, But let's name this as maths tests. Yes. Oh, there is a typo. I'll just recorrect. Okay. Add the dependencies for a test project. So you get packages, browse, XUnit, install, okay, accept. Then Microsoft Test Platform Test Host, install, okay, accept. Then xunit.runner.visual studio, version 2.4.5, install, okay. And then, because we are working with TDD, mocking frameworks become important. So let's say mock, install, okay, and done. Let's close. One way is you can use mock. You can get everything tested and then generate the classes, the actual classes by refactoring. So let's say this class has got a fact using XUnit. I'll put using mock also. Okay. Let's have a method created here. Public void basic router test. Mock is equals to new mock. Or let's avoid mock this time. I'll just remove this. Let's do it a simple way first of all. Router. Assume there is a class router. We instantiate it by the name router and we say new router. Here I say double expected. That is expected value is equals to 2.0. Then I say double input is equal to expected multiplied by expected. That's a square. This is the input. So suppose if I pass 4, it should return me 2. Next is double actual result is equals to router dot, let's say square root to make it more readable. is the method I am assuming that the router class will have, which takes an input. And then I say assert dot equal expected comma actual. Okay. So this is my test case. Now suppose I have tested this already with mock. There is a mock router class created, and then the stub is created, and with stub, I have already tested this method. Just assume. For now, definitely this is going to fail because the class itself doesn't exist. There will be compilation error. So to make this work, I have created a stub class and I have tested it. Now I have decided to go ahead and get the implementation for the router class done. So how do I do that? Here I use some Visual Studio refactoring tools. Just hover on this router or this router, any one of them. You get this light bulb. There is an arrow. Click that arrow. And here you have some options like generate. Generate class router in new file in the same project. Generate class router in the same file. Generate nested class router as a nested class of math test, it will be created. And then there is something called as generate new type. Okay. So here I'm looking for generating a new class, which later on I can move to a separate class library project. So I say generate a new file. So here you can see it has automatically introduced a file router.cs, which already contains the class router. Correct? And it has been automatically resolved as well. Next, I know that there is no square root method. So here I hover and use the light bulb arrow and say generate method square root. Error is gone, which means my router class must have square root method now added to it. Just some changes I'll make here, like I make this class public so that it, even after moving to a separate class library project, it just keeps on working. Same is the case for method. And then this is a reminder that method is there in place, but the body is not yet implemented. So throw new not implemented exception comes by default. Here I just say return. What I want to return is the square root. So here I can take the help from our built-in class math dot sqrt input, right? And my class is ready. So suppose initially I don't put this, rather by mistake with some assumptions, I just say I should get to, this was the assumption. So if I run the test case in this case, it will return me successful only, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my mic was muted by mistake. So I hope this is clear. This was supposed to pass only, right? Because 4 divided by 2 is 2 and 4 square root is also 2 only. But what would happen if I give some different input? Suppose I give 16 over here as input. 16 divided by 2 will be 8, whereas root, if I'm expecting, I should be getting 4. Correct? So I put 4 here. Input is 4 into 4, that is 16. Let's see what happens now. I just change the expected value here and in turn input value over here. It got failed. So I realized that the mistake is here. This should not be input slash 2. It should be square root. And then I run the test again. Now, whatever input you gave and whatever expected value you gave, the result will be always positive. Yes. You can always put the test cases for some exceptional and edge cases also. Like, what if someone is asking for square root of a negative value? Then argument out of exception error should be thrown, exception should be thrown. So you can have a different test case for that. Correct? And you can always use mocking to start with. Start with mocks and then refactor your code to replace mocks with the real code. Correct? Understood?
Yes.
Okay. So let's move on to the next thing now, where we are going to see live unit testing. Partially, we have worked with it already. If you remember, automation of the test runs. We did something in last to last session when we started with the unit testing. Remember? Whenever the code is modified and built, automatically it should run.
Yeah, there is a configuration we set.
Yeah, and what was that?
Build test.
Yeah, so in the test explorer only we did that, right?
Yes.
So if I say run the test, test explorer comes back, and here we can say
Not here
in
in
the
the test
configuration, we have run test after build.
build.
This is one of the option. Any other option that you know?
In the
Here
pipeline
we
we
have
can.
test, live unit testing, start. Will require some configuration, which usually by default is suggested. So I'll just say next. If I want to make any changes, like what should be the timeout for a specific test case, I can set that in terms of seconds. Next, finish. It creates a live testing file. There is a playlist which is created over here, which actually is like what all test needs to be carried out. So you can add all the selected tests over here, and this automatically gets configured along with the build. So whenever you make changes to the code and build your application, your test cases automatically are triggered. So this is one level ahead of this configuration which we saw. Understand? So here I go and make some changes to the test case. let's say I set it to expected 16. The moment I change the code and save it, it automatically got executed. See, I change it to 64. See here, it automatically starts the build. I don't even need to save. I don't even need to build. This is one step ahead of the configuration we saw on the other day, last to last session. So that makes your testing even more faster, and something which you cannot forget or you cannot skip once this configuration is in place. Yes or no? This is what we call as live unit testing. Is it clear?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you get quick feedback, right? You write code and you get the feedback. You write code and you get the feedback. But use it very, very carefully and for very specific tests, because if you are triggering all the tests every time when there is a change in code, even a single letter being changed in the code, all the tests will be carried out every time. And what that means, it will take some time. So productivity will be hampered. So most specific methods which you are modifying should be included in the playlist. You get it? Yes or no? If I have 100 methods and 2 or 3 methods I'm changing, I should include only those 2 or 3 methods into the playlist for this live unit testing. Got my point or not? See here, I can make selections. This pencil icon allows me to edit my playlist. So I can be more selective. And this can be modified any point in time. I have the direct checkboxes here itself, which makes it further easy. I can stop your live unit testing just by clicking on stop. So here onwards, live unit testing will not be performed. You have to do manual triggers. So whether it is build action or whether it is test all tests, run all tests or run specific test. Is it clear what I just said?
Yes.
Useful, right? If used
Yes.
properly. Okay. Now, moving on to the last part. First of all, let's create a new project, class library project. Next, let's name this as UT underscore demo X unit. Five. Next, create. Rename the class. Let's say something named as legacy services. What it has got is some basic functionality that starts with a private read-only field. Okay, just one moment. Let's add a method directly. So let's say I have something which is a public method, but that returns task, and I want this method to be callable asynchronously. So here I say async task system.threading.task needs to be included to make the task class work. The actual return type is integer. And to keep it simple, I'm just using the add functionality. Method name is add, and because it is asynchronous method, I put the suffix async. Int a, comma, int b are the inputs. Just assume that this method is a complex method and taking some time to process its code. Around 1 second it takes, let's say, or 5 seconds it takes. To simulate that, I just say await task.delay 5000. Just assuming that my code is complex code, which might actually be taking time. So say the code talks to some database, retrieves some data, which takes some time. Then some logic is, some algorithm is executed on it, which takes further time, and then it returns. And because it's a long running method, I am looking to make it a asynchronous method. Is it clear? Yes.
Yes.
Let's add our test project here. So add new project, class library, next. I name this as ut underscore demo x unit 5 dot tests. Next, create and get this class renamed. Legacy services tests. And my class is also renamed. Add the packages, same 3 packages, what we have been working with so far. So xunit, install, okay, accept, Microsoft.testplatform.testhost, install, okay, accept, and then we go for xunit.runner.visual studio version 2.4.5, install, okay, and once done, we can close this window. I mean this tab. Yeah, let's close. Let's import xunit. Let's have our fact. Because I'm testing the asynchronous method, I'll make my fact also asynchronous. So async task, again to use task, I need to have system.threading.task imported. add async is the method underscore should return sum is the name. Here I create the instance of my legacy service class where service equals to new legacy service. In order to get this class available here, I again go back here on test project, add project reference, and add the project reference to the previous project. Okay. And then a using statement which imports ut underscore demo x unit 5, making the legacy service class, legacy services class available. Followed by int result equals await. Why await? Because it's an asynchronous method. It returns task. And when the task is completed, then it returns integer. So until and unless it doesn't return integer, I want to keep it busy on a separate worker thread. Main thread should not be used. I don't want blocking actions, right? That's what async programming is. Here I say service dot add async 2,3. And when the result is there, I just say assert dot equal. I know 2 plus 3 should be 5. Just hard code that here. 5, comma result. So nothing special as such. You can have your facts. Your theory is also defined as async so that you can use await inside while calling the asynchronous methods. Test, run all tests. This should be positive test as the code is also correct. So your test explorer says it's running. It took some time, almost 5 seconds, because we have got the delay of 5 seconds over there. For rest of the operation, fraction of a microsecond was required. A plus B is doable by modern processors in fraction of a second, fraction of a microsecond. So it just shows 5 seconds and says passed. Got it? This is the same case even if you are working with NUnit or MS test. There is nothing which will change over there. The only thing which changes is the test framework setup, right? Like in NUnit, this will be called as test method. The class needs to be marked as test class. Correct?
Yes.
MS test has got its own equivalents. So that's the only thing which will change. Implementation of the test method will remain almost the same. Yeah, assertions also might be depending on which framework you are using for testing. Correct? Like MS test says assert dot R equal, whereas NUnit and XUnit say assert dot equal only. Okay? Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
So that is it for today, and that is it for unit testing also. We have a weekend in between, so just practice everything and see if you have any queries. On Monday, we'll be starting with the Git related topics. Okay.
Okay.
Sanket, are we also covering Azure related top concepts?
See, your entire program is divided into multiple modules, and the first module will end up with Node.js and React. In the next module, probably Azure is there. I'm yet to receive the schedule for that, but I'm sure Azure must be added into it because last year when I delivered the program uh, at the Bangalore office, it was a complete till Azure. So I am hopeful that it must be there. Now, why it
When we'll
is
start
being
with
done in
React?
why it is being done in split mode is probably because different people who are going to be targeted to different projects might be attending different modules later on, right? Someone who is going to work on Azure will be attending Azure. Someone who is going to work on some other services probably might be attending some other training. So that's what the plan is. This is the common one that we are going through right now. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. There was one query. I
Yeah, I
guess
was
it
asking
was,
when we are
yeah.
starting Node.js and React.
So Git is the next thing. Next two sessions will be on Git. 2 to 3 sessions will be on Git. In fact, 3 sessions. Then there will be 2 sessions on Node, followed by the 3 to 4 sessions on React. Okay.
Sakit, hi, Ankita here.
Yeah,
Sakit, do we have any midterm, like midweek assessment kind of a thing that you had done?
Yes. So I was actually just thinking of the same thing. Probably after we are done with Git, we will be going with an midterm assessment.
Okay. So probably
So
after a week.
either next Friday or next to next Monday.
All right, all right.
Monday will be right, I guess, because people also get some time, and by Friday will be completed with Git also. So instead of immediately having the assessment, let's give some time, 2 days of preparation time, and then on Monday we can have the assessment.
So
Yeah.
Monday, that means I guess on 18th. 18th will be a official holiday here in Quinnox. Let's plan, Sakit. Let's complete this.
Dates you can just confirm. You
Sure,
can actually share it with Vikas also.
definitely.
Okay.
I'll do that.
What is this holiday about, by the way, Ankita?
It's Ganapati,
Okay.
Ganesh Chaturthi.
Ganesh Chaturthi. I understand. Okay.
We'll have a word, Sakit, post this
Yeah,
session.
sure.
All right, team, it's a heads up that you will be facing an assessment maybe by next week, by the end of next week. After completing the Git module, be prepared for that.